Hello, welcome back to the channel. This video, I'm like irrationally excited about. If you don't know me, hi, I'm a writer and also of course an avid reader. I thought it'd be fun to rank some tropes and give like my thoughts as both a writer and a reader. So we're gonna be tier ranking these tropes. Without further ado, shall we just jump in? Here is the tier ranker template that I made. So we have 5 categories. Top category is God tier. This is going to be reserved for my favorite tropes, the ones that I absolutely love and could rave about for years. Second tier, we have Eating It Up, which is a trope that I really like, love even. Not quite God tier, not my favorites, but still love it. Still, if I see it on a book description, I'm like, yes. Then we have Hit or Miss, which is the category where it depends on the execution. Sometimes I like it, sometimes not so much. And you know, all of these tropes, let's be serious, depend on the execution, but the hit or miss are for those ones where it's like, could go either way. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. Not my favorite, the title says it all. Just not my favorite trope. Not something I'm gonna actively seek out in a book at all. And then we have the bottom of the barrel, which is will ruin a book for me. I'm running screaming in the other direction. I'm not probably interested in reading that book if it has that trope. First off, starting off strong with Grumpy Sunshine. So, Grumpy Sunshine is basically one of the members of the couple, typically our main character and typically our female, is a sunshiny girl. And then the other character, typically the male, is this grumpy, like, attitude guy. I know people love this. This is a classic. It's probably one of the tropes you'll find most frequently in romance novels. It's not that I dislike it, but I'm not running if I see a book has Grumpy Sunshine or reverse Grumpy Sunshine, which is basically the same thing, just swapped. So our main character is like the grumpy one. Yeah. I just don't think a sunshiny character is going to do it for me in the sense that they can sometimes be a little bit annoying. It depends how sunshiny we're talking. If it's like overdone, I'm like, okay, let's relax. And same thing with the grumpy character. Like they can get annoying as well if all they're doing is complaining and they can't get out of their own way. It can get frustrating. That being said, I do understand how this dynamic can be fun and like I love a little tension caused from those different personalities. So I think we're gonna put it in hit or miss because it's not something that I'm actively avoiding, but it's not like something I'm running towards, you know? Which maybe that's a hot take. I feel like a lot of people love Grumpy Sunshine. Correct me if I'm wrong. I did read Flawless recently, which I don't know, would that count as a Grumpy Sunshine? I don't feel like she was that sunshiny though. I'm trying to think of a Grumpy Sunshine book that I like really enjoyed, but I honestly am not really sure if I've read any where it was like prominent enough to stick out. Next, we have Slowburn. Slowburn is going in God tier, obviously. I love a slow burn very much. It's my favorite type of romance. If it's dragged on and I have to wait and wait for the couple to finally acknowledge their feelings, I'm eating that up. I love it. So that's going in God tier. If a romance is not a slow burn, I'm gonna be skeptical. Marriage of Convenience. You know what? I should have added in arranged marriage in here as well because I just read that for the first time, but I feel like my feelings on both is gonna be sort of similar. Marriage of Convenience, actually, I think I like less than an arranged marriage. I would rather a marriage be like forced and they're kind of enemies than, oh, it's just convenient for us to marry each other. So like, let's just get married. For me, that like kills all of the tension and allure. I don't know, you're already married. It's gonna be a lot harder for me to get invested. Like, it's not something that I'm gonna be like immediate no, because I just read Bride and there's a arranged marriage in that. And I didn't mind it in that book. But it's not something that I love either. I don't know, I'm just kind of like, okay, so you guys are already together. I know you don't like each other, but like anything where you're kind of starting off very lukewarm, which is the vibes that I'm getting from Marriage of Convenience. I don't know, I guess it just doesn't do anything for me is what I would say at the end of the day. Like, it's not gonna ruin it. I think we're just gonna put it on my favorite, to be honest. It's just not my favorite. Miscommunication. I have friends where miscommunication is like their biggest pet peeve in a book. Shout out to Mina. For me, it depends how it's done. It's not always the strongest conflict, but I also think it can work. I understand why authors do it. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put it in hit or miss. I think it depends on the execution for me. I'm not as mad about it as other readers are. Sometimes I think it's fine. If the conflict is still good enough, it's fine. Accidental pregnancy. Do we even have to talk about this one? Is it will ruin a book for me or is it not my favorite? I've never actually read this one, so I'm going purely off of my perception of it. I think will ruin a book for me, I'll be honest. We have to put something in that category, and of these, I think that's most likely to go in that category. Enemies to lovers. Is anyone surprised? God tier. God tier. Enemies to lovers is my favorite trope. Period. Wash my hands. Yes, I love enemies to lovers very much. I personally am writing an enemies to lovers novel right this very second. I have a feeling it's going to make its way into a ton of my books. That being said, my enjoyment of this trope kind of hinges on the love interest not actually being a horrible person. So I guess I should make that little disclaimer. But like if they mildly dislike each other and they have a bunch of tension and maybe they're on like opposite sides of some conflict, I can get with that. Yeah, both enemies to lovers and Slowburn, I have a feeling, are going to find themselves in a lot of my writing projects going forward because I just enjoy them so freaking much. Fake dating. So fake dating, and I've mentioned this to my friends before, I have a really hard time buying into fake dating, especially in a contemporary, because I simply think that most of the time it's not earned or warranted. There's pretty much no real life scenarios where fake dating is going to be appropriate or like the solution to your problem. So I guess I just have a hard time buying it when in a book they're like, okay, I guess maybe we should pretend to date each other. I'm like, is that really the logical conclusion here? That being said, I think in a fantasy, I can get behind it more. Specifically if someone's using fake dating to like try and protect somebody else in a fantasy book and sort of like be like, okay, you can't touch this person because we're together. That I can get behind. So I think it's gonna have to be hit or miss because there are instances where I like it and there are instances when I'm having a hard time buying into it. That being said, even when I struggle to buy into it, I do generally enjoy it and the circumstances that ensue. Yeah, I'm thinking of a few scenes, specifically the Court of Nightmares scene in A Court of Mist and Fury. Is that A Court of Mist and Fury? Yes. The scenes in Bride where Lo is taking her to see that other werewolf girl and they have to like pretend to be like married. If you've read those books, you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Chosen one trope. I mean, as always, this depends on the execution, but I'm gonna put it in eating it up. I know a lot of people don't love the chosen one trope. If you don't know what that is, essentially it's like, think of like Harry Potter, where the main character is this chosen one. They're the only person that can save the world, or they're like very special in some way that makes them like a chosen one. I personally like that. I know a lot of people don't like it because it's like, this is so unrealistic, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I think it's like a compelling reason why we're following that character. I think it can be very interesting to see them sort of wrestle with their fate as this like very important person. So I like it. I eat it up. A lot of my favorite series growing up very much had that chosen one trope. Percy Jackson, Harry Potter are the obvious examples. And yeah, I like it. I think it works. Love triangle. I typically like love triangles, actually. I'm gonna put it in eating it up. I love jealousy in a book, and so the fact that a love triangle often brews jealousy, and it's usually the two guys fighting over the girl, and they're both obsessed with her and trying to like win her heart. I love it. Like the Hunger Games love triangle, yes. Yes. Even though I'm not a Gale girl, I could appreciate that, and it made me so happy when Peeta finally went out. I just read the Marionette series and I enjoyed that love triangle, so I like a love triangle. I'm gonna put it in eating it up. Next we have redemption arc. So essentially a character who starts off not so good and eventually becomes good. I really like a redemption arc. I wouldn't say I have any redemption arcs in my current whip, actually. I think it would be very interesting to write though. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in eating it up. I think I like this trope. I think it's fun, and if it's done well, it can be super satisfying as a reader. So, found family, love it. I'm gonna put it in God tier? Yeah, I'm gonna put it in God tier. I really like found family. To me, the ACOTAR series is what comes to mind when I think about the found family trope. I just think it's fun when like a big group of characters get together and they're all homely together and you could just feel the love in the friend group. Like I love a sort of ensemble friend group vibe. I think I have hints of found family in my current duology. It's not like super prominent. If you don't know what found family is, it's basically your characters find family with each other and become like their own little new family. Typically they will also have like sort of dysfunctional families of the past, so they're leaving that behind to find this new family with each other. I do feel like my characters have that like troubled family life past that lends itself to the found family vibes. Yeah, I like this trope. God tier. Next we have friends to lovers. Now I'm gonna be so for serious. I don't love friends to lovers. It's not that I dislike it. That took me a moment to process there. It's not that I dislike it. I think there's a time and a place for friends to lovers, especially if the series is not romance focused. Friends to lovers makes a ton of sense. If the series or book is just a romance or specifically romance focused, I just think friends to lovers makes for a bit of a lackluster romance arc to me. We're gonna put it in hit or miss. All right, next up, we have a strong female hero. Pretty self-explanatory. It's basically when your female protagonist is very like strong, badass girl. Think The Hunger Games, Divergent. I love this. I love this. This feels like the bread and butter of the books that I grew up on. After reading, you know, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, when I discovered the books with these cool female protagonists that were like a little bit edgier and more like powerful, I loved it. I really loved it, and I still eat it up. I'm gonna be so honest. I just love a main girl that's a little bit edgy, very powerful, very strong. I'm gonna put it in eating it up because it's not like the cream of the cream to me, but it is something that I actively enjoy in books and really love. Next, we have training montage, and it's so funny to me that I selected a basketball picture for this. I don't know why, but that is just hysterical to me. So basically, a training montage is a thing that frequently happens in fantasy and stuff, where the person is like learning to fight, they're punching, they're getting stronger, they're training with their powers. I love training scenes. I'll say it. They do it for me. There's quite a few in my current duology project where they're like practicing magic or fighting or whatever. I love it. I love it. I think it's such a fun way also to play with relationship dynamics. There's something about two love interests practicing fighting together that just, it does it for me. It's perfect. And yeah, it's a fun way to play with power dynamics. If you have like an instructor and a student, it's a good way to show a person's internal progress as they progress with their powers or their fitness. I really like it. The only case where I can remember being like, all right, let's wrap it up was A Court of Silver Flames. If you guys have read that book, it is just a massive, huge novel, and a lot of it is spent in like a training ring. And there was a point where I was like, okay, like we get it, bestie. I know Sarah J. Maas loves a training scene, but so I like it. I'm gonna put it in eating it up. I don't think it's God tier, but I do really enjoy it. Next, we have a dark-haired hot male villain. Which I found in like a trope list, and it made me laugh because it's so specific, but we all know. We all know what that is. The fact that Rhysand is my favorite love interest ever should answer this one for me. It's gotta go in God tier. I love it. Okay, next we have tragic past. I do like tragic past as a trope to an extent. I think there are times where it's taken a little bit too far and it gets a little bit like traumatic for no reason or like very intense for no reason. And I'm like, do we need to do all of this? Like, this is a little much for my taste. I do like tragic past. I think it's interesting and compelling when a character has some wounds from the past and they're able to divulge some of these things. I like it within reason. I like it if it's not getting too dark or too spooky, because I personally just struggle a little bit when themes get too dark. So should we put it in eating it up or hit or miss? I think we're gonna put it in eating it up because most of the time I do like it. There's just those few instances where it gets a little aggressive that I'm like, okay, let's wrap it up. Next we have Who Did This to You, which is basically just a protective love interest where if the main girl gets hurt, you know, specifically in a fantasy setting, obviously, because hopefully they're not getting hurt in a contemporary setting. That would be veering into dark territory. But like in a fantasy book, main girl gets hurt by something or someone and the love interest just goes absolutely feral. Like, who did this to you? I'm gonna go beat him up. I love this trope. I really do. That being said, protectiveness in a love interest, I enjoy, but it's not like my favorite thing. I care a lot more that the love interest is just like obsessed with our female main character. This is one of those things where I wouldn't like it in real life, but I do enjoy it in books. You know, like if someone was this protective and like hot-headed in real life, I would find that to be a red flag. But in books, it can work. I'm gonna put it in eating it up because I enjoy it, but it's not like my favorite thing. It's not like God tier level as these other God tier things are. All right, next up, we have age gap. Yeah, no. I don't love an age gap. It's gonna go in will ruin a book for me. It depends how big the age gap is, obviously. You know, like a few years, fine, but I don't even think we would be calling that an age gap. Anything more than that, I'm like, okay, I'm not sold, I'm not convinced. Not for me. You can keep the age gaps. Thank you. Right person, wrong time. Honestly, I don't like this trope. I feel like if it's the right person, you'll make it work and it won't be an issue that it's the wrong time. Maybe if like outside factors pulled you guys apart. I don't know, you're in the middle of a freaking war or something. But even so, I'm always gonna end up being frustrated. Honestly, anytime I read a book with anything like second chancey or I want to be with you, but this one thing is keeping us apart, but maybe in the future we'll reconvene. Like anytime I read or watch something with that sort of story, I just get frustrated because I'm like, no, you guys can just be together. Like, let's cut the dramatics. Either you're gonna be together or you're not gonna be together. I don't want to hear any of this nonsense about let's revisit this in a few years, a few months. I really don't like that, honestly. I can understand how it can be useful from a plot perspective, but I'm always gonna just be like, just get together, guys. Like, let's be serious. So I'm honestly gonna put it in will ruin a book for me. Yeah, I feel really strongly about that. Next up, we have destined mates. As you guys probably know, in a lot of fantasy romance books, there's this concept of mates. This is a thing with fae, fairies, a thing with werewolves. Are those the only two species that this is a thing with? Let me know if you know more that this is a thing with. I love it. I love it. I know some people, they're not convinced by the mates. It does it for me. Absolutely. It's going in God tier. Next we have Amnesia. So basically one of the characters loses their memory, typically forgets about the other character. To be honest, I don't like this trope. I did somewhat like it in Mockingjay, the third Hunger Games book. I thought it was cute that Peeta would ask her to verify his memories and whether or not they were real, with the whole like real or not real thing that they did back and forth. I really liked that. I think it depends on where they're getting their amnesia from. If it's from like an accident or something, not interested. If it's from some evil entity or some sci-fi element, I could be a little bit more interested. I think I prefer amnesia definitely in a fantasy context if the amnesia is linked to part of the fantasy plot. Yeah, there are instances where it works, but overall I would put it in not my favorite. It's not a trope that I'm gonna be excited about. In fact, I'm probably gonna be mildly annoyed that it's in the book. Next we have secret relationships. So essentially two characters get together, but because of whatever reason, they kind of have to sneak around and keep their relationship a secret. I do like this trope overall. I think there's something fun about the mystery and the big like nobody can know, we have to sneak around. Like, that's fun. Then again, if I see it on a book description, I'm not like running to purchase the novel because of the trope. So I'm gonna put it in hit or miss because I like it, but it's not like a favorite, I would say. Next we have forced proximity. God tier. God tier, God tier, God tier, God tier, God tier. I love forced proximity. I think it's so fun. You're stuck in a room together, you're stuck on a journey together, you're stuck working together. I don't care what it is. I love forced proximity. Always works for me. God tier. I have no other comments besides it's the freaking best. I'm actually shocked by how much we have in God tier and eating it up. Like, clearly I like a lot of these tropes. Next we have second chance. Don't love second chance. I really, really do not. My friend Amina has similar sentiments about it, but she has basically described it as been there, done that, and I have to agree. If you've already been together or you've already had romantic tension in the past, to me we've missed the most exciting part of that romance arc. Because to me the most exciting part of a romance arc is when they're first acknowledging feelings for each other, first realizing they're attracted to each other, and we miss all of that with the second chance romance because they've already dated or been interested in each other before. So honestly, I don't love it. I would put it in not my favorite because I can maybe envision a circumstance where it would be okay and not ruin a book for me. But I think if it's the main plot of the book, not really interested. Not really interested. If it was a subplot in a fantasy, I'd be like, okay, fine. Next, we have morally gray characters. I do really like morally gray characters. I think they're interesting. The only one I could think of that I'm like, yeah, I loved that was Draco Malfoy. I'm a Draco Malfoy girl. He's my favorite. I think it depends on what's their justification for their morally gray actions. Do they have good intentions, but have to do some not so great things to achieve those good intentions? Obviously, this is one of those things that depends on the circumstances. It really does depend. I hesitate to put it in eating it up because, I don't know, am I always eating it up? Sometimes I am eating it up though, in the case of Draco Malfoy. But then there's other times where I'm like, oh God, why'd you ruin the love interest? I'm gonna put it in a hit or miss. I think that's fair. Next, we have only one bed. So essentially, our characters have to share a bed because there's only one. I really enjoy this trope. That being said, I think it depends on the execution. What is the reasoning for why there's only one bed? Sometimes I'm like, okay, this feels a little contrived. Like, I read Flawless recently, and the reason why they have to share a bed is because I think the AC is broken. No, the heating is broken in one of the rooms, so she has to go stay in his room, and I'm like, okay, this is clearly just like a little device to be able to use this trope, so I don't love that. But if they're like traveling and there's only one room in the inn or something like that, I can get behind this. It really depends on the context, but I do really enjoy it. I love the tension that ensues and I really like it. In A Court of Mist and Fury, this trope was one of my favorite moments in the whole book. So I think we have to put it in eating it up. Not quite God tier because it does depend on the execution, but I do really like this trope. Next we have childhood best friends. Unsurprisingly, considering my opinions on friends to lovers, I don't love this. It's not something that I would like actively avoid, but it's also not something that's going to increase my interest in a book at all. But it is kind of of cute, I guess, that they have some history and they know some like cute things about each other's childhood. So I'm wondering if we go hit or miss or not my favorite. I mean, it is not my favorite. I would rather our love interests not know each other. Let's put it in not my favorite, but it's not like an angry not my favorite. I will say this is probably the one I like the most out of not my favorite so far. Next we have Forbidden Love. So classic Romeo and Juliet. For some reason, the love between these characters is forbidden or taboo. I do really enjoy this one. I think it's fun if there's like disapproval from people around, especially in a fantasy context, if it's like two different types of creatures or something where there's like, you're not supposed to be together, blah, blah, blah. I do really enjoy that. I do really enjoy that. Yeah, I think we gotta put this one in Eating It Up. I do really like this trope. Next we have Girl Falls First, Guy Falls Harder. This was very niche, but I think one of you guys requested this one. I don't love this because one of my favorite things in a romance is the guy being just like absolutely obsessed with the girl. And maybe he doesn't admit it at first, maybe he's all like torn up about it, whatever, but I really like, I think the guy falling first, and then maybe it's revealed later that he's been in love with her for all this time and we didn't know. That to me is the cream, that's the sauce. I love the guy falls harder part of this, but the girl falls first part, kind of losing me there. So I think this has to go in not my favorite. So I think that is our spread. I'm very pleased. We have a lot in Eating It Up and God tier. That's very interesting to me. But I guess that makes sense because I don't feel like there's a lot of tropes that I actively hate, at least not in this list. But I feel like this tracks. Like all of this makes sense with my reading tastes. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, comment down below which of these tropes is your favorite. I'd be very curious to hear. If you want to support me, I do have a Ko-Fi page linked down below where you can buy me a virtual coffee. Check out all my links in the description. I'm offering manuscript critique services booking into the end of 2024. If you want me to analyze your usage of some of these tropes. And I'll see you guys next week with another video. Bye.